first question I'd like to raise to all of our panelists who might want to weigh in on it is one of the first things, first of all, what a play-in is. So from the ACMP perspective, a play-in is a participatory event where people come and play chamber music for pleasure. And it's not a concert, but there can be friends that come that are just listeners. Often it's nice and people will bring their family or friends and they'll sit back and enjoy it. It's not a performance. It can be sight reading, can also involve some people who would prefer, can practice ahead of time. And we'll get into that when we discuss choosing repertoire and stuff. It's basically, I like to see it as a big kind of chamber music party. And there's many, many types of chamber music parties. And I've chosen today's panelists because they have they've been doing it for a long time and have very different take on it. And today's topic is mainly going to be about big chamber music parties that are open to the public, subject to RSVP, which is the type of play-in that's also eligible for a grant from ACMP. But so that leads me to the question of finding a suitable venue for a play-in. So if you're doing a small venue, is it your home? Do you have a home that can have a big play-in? I know some people do. I think I'd like to start with Phyllis, because you specifically mentioned finding venues for play-ins. Maybe if you can tell us some of the solutions you found, and what do you think what are the qualities of a suitable space? Like, what are the needs that you're looking to meet in a venue for a play-in?
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. So I think it depends on the size of a group you want to accommodate, because I find that the physical space really dictates the number of groups and number of people who can be accommodated. Whether the physical space has pianos or not may dictate the kinds of ensembles you can put together. So as I said, I don't actually live in Seattle, but most of the people would be coming from Seattle. So I looked for a venue in Seattle, and I looked at some schools, some churches, and we are fortunate to have a nonprofit here called Music Center of the Northwest. And they have an old church, and they have about 9 or 10 studios, and then a small auditorium with a stage. And they're a very busy venue, giving classes of all sorts during the week and in the evenings, but on Sunday mornings, their facility is generally available. So they have worked with me 3 times now, and they have parking, they have water fountains, they even have a little kitchen, they have tables for setting up registration. So for me, that has worked out ideally. There are enough studios that I can look at the studios, figure out how many musicians could fit in there, and then say, oh, that room will hold a trio, and this one over here could do a piano quartet. So I find that particular venue very helpful for us. If I couldn't use them, I would probably look for churches that have a lot of small rooms that maybe they use for their Sunday school and couldn't make available for a play-in. So that's how I've done it.
Excellent. So Ginny, you also do yours. You do yours always at the same place, right? In a church.
Right. Yeah, and I think the ideal thing that Phyllis mentioned is generally satisfied by most churches these days, which are, a lot of them are going belly up, or they're being very underutilized, so that you have a bigger choice rather than just Sunday morning. You can do a lot of different times, and they're generally less expensive. I happen to be using my own church, but I don't get necessarily a deal on it. I don't want to screw my own church in order to, but it is cost. We have 10 rooms, 3 plus pianos, varying sizes, and they're all pretty much soundproof, but as the numbers increase, we start playing in the halls, and that also works. So I think the expense is the main thing. Is how much do you have to charge your players, or how many grants do you need to get to be able to afford a bigger venue. We have good parking, which I think is another important thing. We looked into PSU, which is a university here, which has jillions of pianos, because I have to turn pianists away, unfortunately, because I only have 3. And the parking was terrible. It was expensive, and they only had a few days a year where you could maybe get in there. So I would suggest looking at all the going broke churches and asking what they would take for all their rooms.
Yes, thank you. So Peter, I was obviously at your play-in, and actually I'd like you to weigh in on venue as well, because Peter did something different. He used an actual music school. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you organized that?
Sure. Actually, it's a music conservatory, but to clarify for everybody, it's really more of a community music school, of which there are many all over the place. And so I worked with them to find a time. Luckily, they do not have anything going on one day of the weekend. And so basically we had full reign of the building, which had, I think, pianos in almost every room, which was very lucky. It had liberal parking lot outside. It was actually also just about a 10-minute max walk from the nearest railroad station for people coming up from New York City. So it worked out quite well. Their price was a little steeper than we kind of expected, but one of their board members actually made a donation to adjust that down. And so we were able to do it within the parameters of the ACMP grant that we got. So we were lucky with that. And they were invested in it kind of because they really, or very much so, because they're very eager to expand their adult chamber music program. So they had a vested interest in discounting our rate too. And so it was kind of a win-win that we sort of stumbled across.
Excellent. And Michael, what kind of venue, what kind of space do you generally use? Is it always the same, or do you do different places?
Well, the last 2 years we could make music in the school. I was the school doctor of since the last for the last 20 years. I'm glad to be retired since last summer, but I can use these rooms anymore as well now. Still, may I share my
Sure. Yes.
my screen? No, that's not right. This I want to show you. I think it's important that you have rooms that are acoustically independent. In the seminar venue where we come together for once a year, we take care that there is a room between those 2 rooms where music is made, so that there is no disturbance between the several music groups. Well, piano available, that's important. Maybe there's a double bass, that is fine for the double bass player who doesn't want to carry his own instrument. These other things were told already, and there's another chairs, good to sit on. Light is important. Music stands available. So these are the points I think are important.
Oh, thank you so much.
And at school we have the opportunity to use many classrooms. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. And do you get it for a discount because you used to teach there, or do you get it for free, or do you, so how do you work that out?
It's a little discount I have to pay, but it's quite economous.
So I think the takeaway is we need to make friends with people that have space. Schools and churches and
Good, yes.
colleges. Um, so Bob, space is something that, because I know that you're always, that through DC Chamber Musicians and DC Chamber Orchestra, you're always looking for new relationships with spaces in the DC area. Do you want to tell us something about that? Oh, I think you're muted. Whoops.
Yes, indeed. And Susan Alexander and I recently had occasion to go around meeting with some other musical organizations, and that opened some opportunities, community music school in particular. I will say that I certainly completely agree with everything everybody else has said before. They raised some very valid points. We kind of backed into our current location because it accommodates our orchestra, which is quite large. It's the only place affordable that it will accommodate our orchestra, but it has the rent's reasonable. We can do 7 rooms, 2 with good pianos. We have to limit the pianos. We do get a chance to see a lot of churches for potential performance venues, and have taken them into consideration, but they tend to be, unfortunately, despite Jenny's very valid observation that many churches are having financial troubles, and will discount not seeing that in churches in the Metro DC area, and we're getting our space in our current location for a good price. We don't have parking, but we are centrally located and by Metro stops serving the entire metropolitan area. That's public transportation is always important as well.
Bob, could you tell us what you consider a good price? What should we be looking for a 30 to 40 member play-in?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm paying. I don't know whether it's a good price or not. I pay $300 for a 4-hour afternoon, 5-hour afternoon,